right, would like to call this evening's meeting to order. Thank you so much for everybody being here. As far as the second item on the agenda this evening, approval of the October 12th minutes. Do we have a motion to approve?
I'll motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Okay.
You got it.
All right.
No worries.
Doesn't look like there's anybody from the public here for any public discussion at this time. Yeah. So we'll move on to item number 4, CIP 2023 through 2027.
Okay,
Go through.
so tonight I'm going to go through our request for the capital improvement plan. I am going to hand you out packets that have a lot more information than what I'm going to go over. So I know every teacher and every presenter says,
So
don't look back to the back. I'll explain what's in the back when we get there. I know that's really tempting, isn't it? So I'll do a little primer on what our capital improvement plan is and talk to you about the projects that are in and out right now. This is a yearly process we go through, and at the end of the presentation, it would be appropriate for you as a commission to either make a recommendation to approve or to recommend approval as presented, or recommend approval with
Changes.
such as, so take notes along the way if you have anything that may want to change. And let me just walk you through a little bit of a budgeting 101. If you're a numbers person, you might really like tonight. If you're not, hopefully it will still be entertaining.
Should we follow along?
You can follow along if
I
you
don't
want.
want to cheat.
No, just don't go to the back yet. Okay, so our capital improvement plan is a 5-year planning tool for large-scale construction and renovation projects. We get to the projects that are recommended for the plan from all of the master plan work that we've been doing. So for Parks and Recreation, the projects you see in here are largely based on recommendations from the Park Master Plan of 2016, which we're almost through, the Natural Areas Plan about a year later, the Bicycle Master Plan. So there are a lot of trail projects that are in the Parks and Rec budget. I don't actually manage those as a staff person, but we get credit for them in our department. And then the Recreation Facilities Program Master Plan that we just finished, and then development opportunities. You'll see throughout this plan, there's money going in for what we're calling Carson Lake Park. That is a new development that hopefully is coming west of Highway 218. And I'll kind of talk about that. It's not a done deal yet, but we've started putting money out there so that when it happens, we can be able to do that. It's adjusted annually, so it's adopted annually, but it's also adjusted annually. So we'll go through 5 years worth of priorities and projects. Starting with projects that are 2023, you'll find that most of those are underway, and you can pretty much bank on those happening. Probably the same for 2024 projects. 2025, we start to get a little bit more iffy about, and 26 and 27 are placeholders, and as we move forward, projects will shift around from time to time. We also change based on conditions, so we may have a park project, a playground that is scheduled. The Penn Mall playground was one that was actually scheduled for a few years out from now. We realized the condition of that old playground was reaching the point where if we didn't do it sooner, we were going to have to close it without an alternative. So sometimes things will switch because we have concerns about their safety or their longevity. There's changing in funding sources. In this next year's list of projects, you'll see that several are grant required, so we don't have the grant yet, so you'll see a few that we don't know for sure are going to happen, or they may happen in a different way. And then sometimes projects have to be reallocated through departments due to priority overall. So we negotiate, I was gonna say compete, we negotiate with streets and sewer and the airport and every other city department. So sometimes there's a big street project, Rochester or hopefully Taft Road someday. It just gobbles up a ton of money for that year. And there's only so much money each year that the city can bond for. So every year it's a little bit of a shell game or a little bit of a puzzle to put together to figure that out. The process that we go through is we start out, each department head works with their staff to submit the projects for this year or for the 5 years based on our priorities. So we start out, we submit, gosh, for our department, probably 50 or 60 individual budget sheets, one for each project. And with each budget sheet, we look through, we say, what master plan did it come from? What's the community need for this type of project? What's the economic level of the neighborhood it's in? So projects that are in lower income neighborhoods get a higher priority than ones that are in more affluent neighborhoods right now until we kind of catch up with that. And it also will look at other possible funding sources to make things happen. We present all that to a staff budget team. So the staff budget team is a couple members of the city manager's office, finance staff, and then generally the 5 department heads from the larger departments. So myself, Public Works, Neighborhood Services, Finance, and I'm forgetting, someone's gonna be mad I left them out. But basically there's 5 of us that get together and start the arm wrestling process first as a staff.
Julie, can I ask really quick?
Yeah.
You mentioned that they're prioritized by level of income, presumably in a neighborhood. I'm sorry, is it based on like the value of houses? How are neighborhoods ranked from like,
Yeah.
you know, most need to affluent?
Yeah, so first of all, it's not the only thing we prioritize. It's one of 5
Okay.
different criteria. It's based on CDBG block designations.
Oh,
So
okay.
low and moderate income, the city is, and the map is on the city website if you want to see it.
Okay.
It's all broken up by income levels of people living in each of those neighborhoods, and it follows the Community Development Block Grant federal guidelines.
But how would they know how much money each family?
Is that like census data?
It's census
Oh,
data, and I'm not sure exactly
how
what
that
else.
was determined. Okay.
Yeah, good question. I don't know the full answer there. So then it goes to the finance director and the city manager. They refine it further. Sometimes they push projects back. This year we got about 3 projects moved forward to next year, which we're like, oh my gosh, we have so many things happening. It's awesome. It just depends on how the overall puzzle fits for where a big project is going to take a lot of money and where things are going to take less money. And now we're here where you're going to review it and to make a recommendation. And the final steps is that as staff, we will review it with the city council, usually at their mid-January work session on a Tuesday afternoon or evening, and then they will approve it sometime, usually February or March. That being said, at this step in the process, once it's made it through the finance director and the staff budget team and city manager, it's pretty close to what's probably going to be approved by the council. Once in a while we get surprised. Usually it's because somebody has a project in their neighborhood that they would really like to see done, and they'll ask that we move something else back and something forward. That still happens on a council level, but this is pretty much what you see tonight is pretty much the plan for what we're going to be doing. So what's the difference? We have 2 different types of budgets that we work with here. We have the capital improvement or CIP, and then we have operating budget. So our capital improvement budget, over the next 5 years, it's somewhere between 8.3 million to 12.9 million that we have in these construction projects that are happening under Parks and Rec. It's 32.5 million over 5 years. That is project design, bidding, construction cost, no staff costs. So especially Tyler and I spend a lot of time working on these park projects. It doesn't include our time, it doesn't include engineering staff time. This is construction and consultants. It's generally not an annual maintenance item. So if we're painting an office, if we're replacing the tile in one of our rooms, that's an operating expense. If we decided to completely redo this room with new lights, new everything, and it was like $15,000, $20,000, that might land in the capital budget. But smaller projects are in operating, larger in capital. Our operating budget each year is about $11 million for Parks and Recreation, probably one of the highest ones in the state. And that's a 1-year time frame. We submit that and it's approved by the city council each year. We've had, once again, all of our staff budget meetings over the last 3 weeks. It funds all of our daily operations, anything that's about under $10,000 for repairs. So if we were going to replace the tables and chairs in this room, it would probably come out of operating. If we decided across the entire rec center we were going to replace all the furnishing, that might become a capital improvement item. So it's more a numbers game. And operating budget is all the staffing for operations. Okay, so within the capital improvement plan, we also have several in the category that are annual improvement projects. And so for Parks and Recreation, these are line items that we tend to get about the same dollar amount each year, and it's for projects that are kind of in between. So for City Hall every year, because it's under government buildings, we have 50,000 in this account. And this is for things that rank above painting the walls. It's usually something like one piece of HVAC equipment that goes out, or some other fairly big piece of equipment, or a smaller renovation. We're looking at replacing all of the water faucets to automatic fountains. So that's something that'll probably come out of this annual CIP line. We have one for park annual improvements. We used to have about 100, 150 in here a year. We don't get quite as much anymore, but we get it in some other lines. These are what we do, things like we add signs. Each year in the last 3 years, we've done a certain number of new park signs. This is what we do if one of the Youth Sports Association comes to us and says, we have $10,000 for a new scoreboard, but we need 15, can you give us 5? That kind of thing comes out of this line item. So we call it either partner projects or smaller improvement projects. Tyler, can you think of anything else that we've done?
Sometimes our park furnishings, if they don't happen to be part of actual project or they need upgraded, could come out of this.
Like bike stations and,
the bikes.
grills and
Benches.
yeah, smaller things like that.
Why does City Hall repairs fall under this budget?
Because in Parks and Rec, we have, one of our divisions is government buildings, and so we have all the maintenance and custodial for all the, so for City Hall, police, fire, animal shelter, senior center, and the 2 rec centers. So we have, that's Kumi Morris on our staff. She maintains all of those, as well as staffs them with custodial and maintenance people. So that's in our budget. Yeah, good question. Park annual ADA accessibility improvements, $30,000 a year. That's for small paths. So we've gone through based on the 2016 master plan, and we've done all kinds of like 10 or 15 feet of path here or there just to get accessibility to a playground or a shelter. 30,000 is not even quite enough to do one per year. It's tiny. So we bank that money and tend to do it, do 2 or 3. And that's another difference between capital improvement budgets and operating. Operating, you must spend by the end of the year or go to finance and beg to keep it. Capital improvement projects can hold on, and you can accumulate money in these annual funds for larger projects. A new one this year, or last year actually, was climate action facility improvements, and we got quite a bit of money there, $250,000. For anything we do throughout the buildings that support our climate action goals. So replacing LED lights, water saving fixtures, if we were to do solar on a building. We manage that in Parks and Rec, but in coordination with the Sustainability Office as well. We have the intra-city bike trails and bridges. This is not generally building new trails, this is going in. We have, like right now, 3 or 4 bridges on the bike trails that are getting in really poor shape. The money from here will be used to replace those. So it's smaller trail projects. When we had part of the trail fall into the river back, and I have a river trail, things like that can typically come out of this fund. We have $50,000 a year for rec center improvements. That's for this building and for Mercer. This is a line we do smaller things. Some of the things we're planning on doing with it next year is replacing some of the ceiling tile throughout it. Don't look up too often when you're out here, it's kind of gross. Potentially doing some tile replacement on the floors, some fixture changes in the restrooms, so smaller type things. Some of the smaller items that were called out in the rec facility master plan will come out of this budget. There was specifically some work on the Mercer gym doors and some water leaking problems. That is probably going to rise to come out of this line. We're going to be doing Mercer Park, and we're going to be doing a new entrance into the rec center and getting that repaved. It's got quite a few stumble blocks in it right now. Some of those things go. There is a separate line we'll talk about later, which is about $700,000 a year. So that's for the bigger ticket projects for the rec center. This is for the much smaller things that we try to plan for, but come up piece by piece. We do $100,000 a year right now for annual and contracted tree improvements. We are currently trying to water 800 trees plus.
1,000 plus.
1,000 plus now. It changes every day. But these are the larger street tree planting projects that you've seen recently. One, we did the Mackinac neighborhood. We have one, a big one in the South District happening right now. We've had one along Scott Boulevard. So we're really, yeah, go ahead.
Do you have, like Cedar Rapids had like all their tree canopy devastated? We didn't get it nearly as bad, but I know like on the east side, like along Walnut Street, along Friendship Street, kind of like in between those two areas, we lost a lot of big trees. Are there any plans to?
So, if you want to talk to that about,
Friendship is a little tricky depending on how wide the space is and what yard trees are still there. And there's a lot of ash trees in the yards that still need to come down before something else goes in. But we tend to use that at a different than this fund. Unless we can put a lot of them in one area. Those tend to come out of our operating budget and an infill type planting, what we would call it. So an example of that this year would be on Wayne Avenue. We did quite a few trees and a few block stretch there. And then if someone asks, hey, I want to tree in front of my yard, or in my yard, or the right of way by my yard in front of my house, then that's when we may use that as well. So, yep. Sometimes we get at it piece by piece, and sometimes it's a larger project. This is for the larger projects.
okay, so now let's go year by year. 2023 is scary and exciting at the same time. Okay, more projects than we showed you last year when we had this happening. First of all, we got the REAP grants, so our REAP grant projects end up in the CIP budget, even though they are completely funded by the state. So this is Hickory Hill Park ecological restoration that will happen this year, contract work there. Kiwanis Playground, $350,000 for the playground changes, which is probably a little, I should never say this, probably a little more than we need there, but you will be seeing this at the December meeting where we have a public meeting with the neighborhood scheduled for November 22nd, and then the consultants will be here in December to show you the final plans of where we're going with that one. Hickory Hill Park, this one got moved forward to 2023. It was in an out year before. This is the northern restroom and shelter. It's the last of our original 1960 or 70 style octagon type restroom. It's got some really unique architecture to the restroom. If you've never used it up there, go see it before we take it out. Anyway, the plan is to replace it with our standard restroom and shelter that you're seeing in our other parks. So similar to Weatherby or McPherson Park. So a nice standalone restroom and a nice shelter replacement. Not a lot of neighborhood review on this one because we're simply replacing what's there with the new park standards. Happy Hollow Playground and Ball Field replacement. As you remember, as a commission,
People came and talked to us.
yeah, you made a recommendation to go ahead and replace it eventually with the ball field with the old skin it like it was. We thought that would happen in 2024, 25. A lot of interest from a couple of the council members to get it done. So they've moved it forward. It'll happen next summer. Same thing in December, you will see the plans for the playground. We've already had 2 neighborhood meetings out in that park in the last 2 years, so there won't be another one for playground design. We will choose the playground that's within the budget and based on the input we received, and we'll see that come back in December. Terrell Mills Skate Park and addition of a pump track shows it's $2 million right now. Before it was about $1 million. This is part of the grant package we have into the state for this one of the state tourism grants. So the $2 million is dependent on us getting some funding from the state. If we don't get that, it would be scaled back to more like the $1 million project.
Is it like they request some kind of match? Is that what the grant would be? Okay.
So I think it'll happen in some format, but it depends on how much grant money we get. Mercer Ball Field renovations is underway. But as far as design, you will see that in December, and same with pickleball tennis court renovations. Hunters Run Playground, we will have the neighborhood meeting for that on November 22nd, and then once again, you'll see that December, you'll see the review of what's being planned for that park.
Julie, is this pickleball one, sorry to go back one, is this like an expansion? Is this addressing any of the pickleball people? or is this just a renovation of current?
So, don't know the final answer for that.
Okay.
$400,000 is enough to pretty much hopefully rebuild what's there
Okay.
without an expansion and without a lot of extra bells and whistles, but it would give them a good solid foundation without cracks. And I think once we get further into the design, we'll be able to say, okay, if you want shade in a certain area, this is the extra cost. There might be some fundraising potentially happening with it too.
Okay.
But ours is pretty basic of what we can afford with that.
Okay.
Okay, there's more projects for 2023. Event facility improvements is actually the Shakespeare stage in the Riverside Festival Shakespeare stage in Lower City Park. It's part of the grant to the state as well. If we get the grant, it'll be about an $800,000 project. If not, it would be more like a $500,000 project. So it just depends. And there's a lot of work to do. We'll do as much as we can do to kind of bring it up to, it's just been, not a lot's been done to it for 10, 15 years. Little Creek Trail replacement is it out to bid or it's ready to bid? I can't remember.
50% is mine.
Okay, so it's not ready to bid yet, but it's in the works. We have money, once again, if the grant comes through for a kayak launch at Waterworks Prairie Park, kind of by the bridge on Dubuque Street there. Sturgis Ferry boat ramp improvements are part of the bid, or part of the grant package request, but in this case, Public Works is doing a project there anyway, so we're being tacked on to the Public Works project, so the $600,000 is already allocated and ready to go. It won't do a lot for the boat ramp part. It will make improvements to the parking lot that's there and maybe add a small shelter area. And then this Carson Lake Park planning, $200,000 in there now to start some of the planning design work. They're looking at this park being a fairly large park that would include potentially a large retention basin similar in size to Terry Trueblood, with potentially a trail around it and maybe some kind of indoor recreation space. Be a new elementary and middle school, it sounds like, out in the area, and we would likely partner with them in a similar situation like we do for Southeast Junior High. So a lot more to be detailed, but I think we're gonna end up with some fairly significant rec facilities out there.
Do we have any dates of?
You'll find money here in the budget for the next 5 years, but no development plan has been approved yet.
Do we know what space this would be on at least? Like what?
So
Block or
I
whatever?
kind of hesitate to even show that yet.
Okay, that's fine.
So,
Is that
Yeah.
the west side of town?
yeah, far west, so past 218 and out to the west. It's not within city boundaries right now even, so I don't think.
Oh, it'd have to be annexed still?
Yeah,
Oh,
So-
okay. I see what you're saying, yeah.
but it's reliant on city sewers, so it probably will be, and it will probably be a new development out there. Okay, so any questions on those 2023 projects?
One question about the kayak launch at Waterworks Park. It's not exactly right up on the dam, but there is, like, I guess there is that dam there. Is there, just kind of curious what
So
the thing is with that?
I've been looking at kind of a water trail situation where there would be several smaller ones. So there'd be one there. There would be one in the Coralville area, in the River Landing area. Another one down at Sturgis. Potentially one off of our Napoleon Park shop. So each one is not meant to be a full, you can't go very far in the river with any of them, but it's meant to be smaller area attractions. So,
Would
yeah.
there be, because I remember when I kind of paddled through there one time, and people were calling the cops, like, you're gonna go over. I don't know, I guess I just wondered.
Very dangerous.
No, like,
Yeah.
because, that dam, like on the Burlington Street Bridge, I mean, it's not that far
Yeah.
away, and I just wonder, like, people are, what type
Yeah.
of skill level, people getting on the water, I mean, it does seem like.
that all
pretty
has to
good.
be taken into
Yeah.
consideration still. At one point when I first got here 6 years ago, they were actually looking at a plan to replace the roller dam there and do more of like a kayaking course, which you've seen in other places.
That would be amazing.
Yeah, I forget the price tag, it's quite expensive, and the biggest problem is most of the University of Iowa's key power and IT stuff and cable stuff comes through that dam. So it's more the cost of trying to relocate all of that on top of the typical cost of the project, so. Yeah, so I think beyond this 5 years, I think we'll continue to be talking about the river and what can be done to make it safer and better and more recreation opportunities for sure. Okay, 2024 projects. So some of these would start later this year with design, but they wouldn't be constructed to the calendar year of 2024. And we have Palisades Development Park. We're going to have to rename this, so just start thinking about that. Because there's the Palisades State Park, and we have this little sliver of land kind of in the northeast part of town that will end up with a playground, a small playground, shelter, very small. We're getting the land through park dedication, and we might have it by now, and it's anytime. We'll
It's
be
about
getting-
3 residential lot sizes.
Yeah,
so
so not
not
too
very big.
Mercer Scanlon, this is where I said there's a second fund out there of about $700,000 a year for the rec centers. We look to that, and most likely do the roof replacement at Mercer and Scanlon. Lower City Park sheltered restroom renovations. So pretty much we will look at all the shelters that are in Lower City Park, probably consolidate some of them so we have fewer. At this point, we're thinking of renovating the red brick restroom. Our idea is to have fewer restrooms, but better restrooms for staffing and for maintenance along the way. So you might see the gray brick ones closer to the where shoes go away, and we'd get renovations at red brick by the new playground, and maybe some by the stage, the festival stage too, potentially. So design to be determined on that. Calder Park, we're gonna get a connection, there's gonna be a new development to the east of that, Monument
There is,
Hills.
yeah.
Yep,
Yep.
and the Monument Hills has to build the bridge over the creek.
Oh, are they gonna do that as part of their development? Okay.
Well, yes. And so we will then do the trail connections from there, and then most exciting, I think, for a lot of us, we'll be able to do the switchback trail. It's a huge hill as you come out Hickory Trail, and it's never been a fully accessible park for that reason. So we're gonna be able to do the switchback trail.
All the way to Rochester?
No. We just have to do our part in the park for now. But it will do that, and so you have access into the park and paved surfaces to get to the playground, the shelter, and the fire ring that are in there. As you remember, there was an annual improvement fund for ADA improvements. In 2024, there is no money placed in that fund for ADA improvements because this project includes that, and it will all go to Calder Park in that situation.
So you'll just connect to that new neighborhood, and then you can get through that new neighborhood to Rochester?
Correct.
Okay,
Yes,
yes, okay.
I should have mentioned, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So there's not very many in 2024. And now, once again, I'm going to talk about the pages in the back of your packet, but don't look. I know this is hard, don't look. In the back of your packet, you have the full city CIP projects list for everything from street projects to wastewater treatment to everything. If you're wondering why we don't have very many projects in 2024, just look at the street department budget. There's a few very large street projects that are taking a lot of the money. So I left the full budget in there so you can kind of see how it kind of varies and moves back and forth from one department area to another. So 2024 won't be as large of a construction year for us in Parks and Rec. 2025, we pick up though. This is our highest year, and you can see why.
Whoa.
We have reevaluated how much City Park pool renovations are probably going to cost based on the amount of input we've been receiving, and gotten some more information from other similar pools. And this would be to really renovate it with essentially what's there now. This is not a lot of bells and whistles beyond a new locker room, shower area, and a new pool, but not with much. It's definitely not a water park, let's put it that way. So still to be determined if even this is enough, but we shifted things around so we could have more money set aside hopefully for this project. This is scheduled in 2025, but as we talked about in the rec facilities and program master plan, we will actually likely be hiring the consultant to lead the project at the end of 2023, and then doing most of the design work and the public input process through all of 2024. So that would mean that in 2025,
Summer of.
summer of 2025, probably Typically for a pool project this size, we would probably close early in 2024 if we were ready, if we had bid it by then.
Some
So we
pre-work.
might close like August 15th to get a start on it, to get the demolition started. And then you can pretty much bet we would be closed probably through the whole next summer. Sometimes they try to push it for a 4th of July opening or August 1st opening.
Yeah.
Let's hope, realistically, it's gonna be a whole summer down.
Yeah.
Also in the year, we will do the Upper City Park restroom and shelter renovations. This will actually be folded in with the City Park pool project because as we showed in that master plan, likely the restrooms for the park will be incorporated into the pool bathhouse. So we have one structure that can be heated and probably kept open throughout the winter then instead of having two smaller ones.
Would people need to have, how would you separate people who like paid to be at the pool versus
Yeah.
people using the park?
So the way I see this, and I've seen this in other facilities, there would probably be two single-user restrooms facing the park
Okay,
that are only available to the park, that's as far in as you can get.
okay,
And then on the other side of that wall, we
It's
would
the
probably have
paved.
the shower facility or whatever that's included with admission to the pool.
that you could close down, winterize kind of thing?
Yeah, so they all share the same plumbing, the same roof and all that, it's just two different.
Okay, yeah, because you might have to separate those
Yeah.
somewhere.
2025 would be College Green Park playground replacement, a little bit of bigger playground at College Green. Probably not a lot of other renovations to that park though, it's pretty good except for that.
That's a
80,
highly used,
the whole, yeah.
it's very central.
If anything, we would probably renovate the basketball courts because that probably gets as much use there as the
Yeah, that's
playground.
just a very popular
Right.
one, yeah.
ADA elevator improvements, that's through all of our city facilities. And then once you get a little bit more money for this Carson Lake project. Court Hill Trail is the final one in 2025. This is a small portion of the trail, so it's just west of the dam that enters into Scott Park. So there's a trail that goes back into the neighborhood into Beach Street. Did I say that right, Tyler? So it's not a very long part of the trail, but it's in really, really poor shape. So it's just simply replacing it with a new concrete trail from that short distance.
On this one, the Carson Lake land acquisition, so I'm presuming this is not the kind of situation where a developer would donate X back to us if you have money in there for it.
It's difficult to say because it's a pretty large and complicated project, so.
Okay, so it's just, you're putting the placeholder so you have it if you need it, but
And
potentially
you
that.
haven't seen the big number yet, it's
Okay.
coming. Yeah, it's coming. The
Okay.
200,000 there is probably more for planning of the area. And then the last one, and that would be the Highway 6 trail from Broadway to Fair Meadows happens in 2025. A side path there. 2026, oh, sorry, that was 2026, I don't know where that came up that way. Stonebridge Park Development. If you were on our tour that we did last summer, we stopped there. It's just east of Frauenholz Miller Park, east of the church that's up there. And as they finish development, we get a nice little parcel of land down by the creek. It has similar features to the Court Hill Trail area. So if you've been in Court Hill and they have the big rocks and boulders that kids like, there's a whole other set of them here in Stonebridge Estates, and that had to do with the railroad that was going to go through. So we'll try to keep that incorporated in there somehow. Here we get the $700,000 for this building, and we're leaving it open-ended to what that would be for. If the pool filters continue to degrade and we decide we need to keep them operating to that point, it could be that, or it could be the roof replacement, whichever becomes the higher priority several years down the line. Plus, we would also have City Park pool essentially done, and that would be the point where we would be revisiting the future of both the indoor pools. So we leave that one a little open-ended. Napoleon softball fields, fields 5 through 8 renovation. I laugh because this is one that has moved around 17 times in the 6 years I've been here, and someday we'll get it done. But for some reason it keeps getting pushed. They aren't in terrible shape, so we keep saying we can make it go a little longer, but it's there. A couple smaller projects, Benton Hill Park by then will need a new playground replacement. in North Market Square. That one's a little bit larger because the elementary school also uses that park. So we know that playground will be a little bit larger. And
Is
then
there an opportunity to go in with the school district somehow? Some kind of partnership?
our agreement with them is a little different there in that they did build their own playground really nicely next to it, and sometimes we get to use that.
So it's kind
And
of.
so we say we will do the playground
Okay.
within the park. It's kind of a trade-off in that way. We use each
Just
other.
moving buckets of money, really.
Yeah. And then the Rito Street Park renovations. Will that be playground, we think, at that point by then, or is it mostly trails? I can't remember.
That's playground and accessibility.
Okay, and here you go, Carson Lake Basin, 1.9 million there. So that would be to build this retention area and ponds. So pretty much any money we're talking about this, at this point, gets us a park for the future, but it's not gonna be an active recreation space by the time we finish, if it moves along like this. So either stay on the commission or come back in 2027, 28, because that's largely when, if this all happens, there'll be a really cool new planning process for a brand new regional park out there.
So it would be like where you're boating or fishing and
Think so.
kayaking type, not boating probably, but maybe kayaking.
The intent right now is it would be similar to Terry Trueblood.
Okay.
But that's the intent right now, and we're several years out,
Yeah.
so that could change.
Okay.
To be real honest, we don't really know.
How much space are, oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Go for it.
How much land is it? I was just having a hard time,
Yeah.
the whole time you were talking about it, I was thinking of like a little city park, you know, a little, kind of neighborhood park. but it
Yeah,
sounds like-
no, this is, Tyler.
Terry Trueblood Lake is 100 acres for reference, so if it's about that size, you probably need a couple hundred acres if you're gonna do trail and other stuff with it, somewhere in that range.
And the entire development, that's only about a sixth maybe of the entire development. Because there's also, like I said, 2 to 3 school sites in there, plus all the housing and commercial
Yeah, I
to
mean,
make that all work.
usually the elementaries are 15 acres minimum,
Yeah.
and junior high, probably more than that by quite a bit.
I'll see what information I can find to send you that's already published, so you can see
It's
what.
public, yeah.
Is there, so it sounds like there would be a whole new development being put out there. Are there any sort of expectations that you put on developers, like to contribute back to, because I mean, it would be a great asset, you know, to be like, hey, move into this new neighborhood right next to.
And get all the new schools and the new.
Yeah,
just
so,
wondered-
at the very least, there's park dedication or neighborhood open space dedication for any development. And, or we can either take land or we can take cash in lieu that we can then use for projects. And that's based on the size and what else is happening in a development. That's kind of the bare minimum. And then you're right, we do try to work with developers for exactly those reasons.
Yeah.
In this case, the land that we would need for this large lake is some pretty decent land for them, and I can't see them, we
Just
gotta.
give it away.
Yeah, we gotta buy some of it, I'm sure. So
Yeah.
there's always some
Give and take.
give and take
Yeah,
for
yeah,
what
yeah.
they get and what we get out of it, and this one has been in negotiations for at least 2 years already, so it
Yeah.
takes a while.
Yeah, I think we had touched on it, maybe a west side, I mean, at least a year, maybe 2 years ago now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you say what the land is used for now? Is it agricultural or?
Mostly agricultural, it's in the county still, where the pond is might be all wetlands or something, I'm not real sure.
There's a creek or a couple of fingers of the creek that goes through the general area.
2027, we go through another 700,000, not designated yet at all, because figuring by then we'll know more about what next renovations. 300,000 towards the 2 dog parks. And this would be one that if there's a way to scoot this forward, we would probably do even 100,000 of it in a different year, just to start doing some of the trails and fencing and starting to replace those in those 2 parks. Mercer Park shelter renovation, this is the shelter that is next to the large playground at Mercer. It was the one, right, that was caught on fire for a little bit this summer?
Oh.
Yeah, so this is the reason things like that happen and move things forward. It's
Oh.
still 5 years out, so if a storm, you know, we'll be monitoring it to see if it stays there or it gets moved forward again. It's at least in the list, so that's good. We've asked for, Tyler called this a storage building. I'm gonna say it's a barn because it's 225 does not really buy you much of a building. But it's a cold storage building, likely out at Kickers, for us to store all of our equipment. Right now it's stored in multiple small spaces or outside, which isn't really good for it.
And would the Kickers one survive past the water treatment expansion? So
Yeah.
it would be somewhere where it's not moved again after that.
Right. And another segment of the Iowa River Trail, this is what they're calling the Gateway segment. So this is on the east side of the river between Park Road and the University of Iowa pedestrian bridge. So there, you have a trail on the west side. We don't have one on the east side. I'm sorry I didn't have time to put all the pretty pictures in the show.
No, that's okay. I was trying to like mentally
Picture
like
what it
put
is.
myself where that is.
So yeah, that'll be really helpful to have that there.
Yeah, it's been asked for a long time, so if we could get that.
Don't worry, it's 5 years away.
Okay, so.
Don't bet on it.
In your packets, you have, like I said, you have all the slides, and then you have a set of white sheets that, yeah, hold this up.
Yes.
And that gives you more detail on the overall city capital improvement project budget for all departments. So you can see
Wow.
how we stack up and what things, if you want to know what's coming to your neighborhood, read through there and you can see what streets are coming and what.
We got like street lights and
Oh,
all that
everything. You get
detail.
everything. And that's all available online too. I'm not giving you anything super secret there.
Super.
And then after that is the unfunded list. So let me take you through. So we asked for many more projects than we got funded, even though I think any Parks and Rec director would be like, this is amazing how much we get to do here. But there are other things that we hope to get done. I'm gonna start the list with some of the smaller things that we would hope to get done in the next few years. They didn't get funded yet, but we keep these on an unfunded list. So let's say another project falls through and there's still some funding available. One of these could potentially slide into its place. Scott Park, we
What
have an
number is
ADA project. What?
What number is that?
You have to go back, look up at the screen. Let's do that. Scott Park driveway and parking lot improvements. We're doing the area by the dog park this fall or next spring. We'd like to do the rest of that parking area there. It's all just a seal coat right now, and so we get that one. Benton Hill Park, you saw that the playground replacement is coming up in a few years. We would like to add a sidewalk, which would end up being on the south side of Benton Hill. It is like a really steep side that comes down from the park to the street. It's dangerous to mow. So we would have to bench in a sidewalk and have like a retaining wall. It's expensive. It would actually be better for access to people to the park, and access would help keep our staff safe. So that's why we're asking for that eventually. Brooklyn Park was in our request based on the park master plan. It's pushed back right now because of other projects. Same with Oak Grove Park. It has been in and out of the plan a couple times in future years. Right now, it's sitting unfunded. This is the big one you need to know about. So the Robert A. Lee pool renovations had been in there for $800,000 or $650,000 before. Looking at the recommendations of the master plan and what's there, that level of renovation could happen with the $700,000 that we just talked about. A full-on renovation of this building is more than that $4 million, or just the pool. So it's sitting in unfunded right now. But remember, that's also because
We don't know which direction we're going.
we don't know which one we're gonna do.
Yeah.
So having it here right now is okay. I don't wanna get people too worked up about that. Once we get through City Park, then that will be addressed and probably shuttle into whichever year would be best for that. We also asked for a trail loop at Fair Meadows Park. It is not in here, but it may be eligible for some community development block grant funding, so that one may come back sooner. We asked for a trail connection from Southgate Avenue over to the Iowa River Trail, and that came actually through our planning office. That one's not funded yet. And then replacing the trail from the Napoleon Park Shop to Riverfront Crossings. That whole section of trail has some issues and it needs a full-on replacement. It's unfunded right now, but same thing, as the conditions warrant or if other things switch around. And we also asked for some funding to improve the trails at Whispering Meadows, the boardwalk and the trail there. Those are things that are not in the budget right now. There's some long-term things that have been out there for more than a year that are still not funded. Riverfront Crossing Park, Phase 4.
Is that the amphitheater?
Amphitheater, kayak launch, things could have been in the northwest corner of the park. We're really waiting on to see what happens still to the north of that area, where
The businesses.
the businesses are right now. Yeah, eventually the park will probably follow the river north. So we're holding off on anything else there until we have a more definitive answer on what's gonna happen with that. We also we have full plans for a second restroom over by the playground area and a second pedestrian bridge, which would cross about where the rental place is across the river. So the bridge can't happen until that use changes there. I would say the restroom would probably be similar at that point, so down the road. Ashton House, Project Green would like to see a second parking lot area, and then at Ashton House,
The parking is hard there.
it is hard. Staff is not too excited about this one though, so it's never really moved very high in the priority list.
Because you don't want to take out green, is that why?
Yeah, and even with more parking, the building itself can't really accommodate too many
Yes,
more
it's
people.
small.
The parking was really sized for the type of events that can happen there, so.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Lower City Park Master Plan included the raising of the road, and,
Big price tag.
yeah. But
Is
remember,
Is that for flooding,
it would
the raising of the road?
It would protect the ball fields and the stage and everything better from the roads. But that 23 million also included things that we've already started doing. So things like changing over some of the lower, there used to be the smaller ball fields down in the low areas. That's been changed over to Prairie. The playground replacement was part of this originally. Some of the shelter changes, taking out the amusement park rides. So we've kind of been taking care of little bits and pieces of this as we go. But still that's out there, and then East Side Sports is still out there as an unfunded.
I hear a lot about that still. I'm kind of a go-to person, I think.
I think we'll hear about it until there's some more champions or fundraising to help pull it together. So that is your full capital improvement budget plan. Are there other questions?
Yeah, I was happy to hear, just one of the questions I had was just accessibility and making sure that's a priority, and you kind of addressed that with some of the kind of budget items that way. And one of the other questions I had was to make sure that, a lot of the parks were being in not just one section, but across the city kind of updated, and it seemed like as the needs were addressed that way, you kind of covered that as well. So those were some of my questions or things that I was concerned about. And then climate action was also seeing that was a big portion.
Has there ever been like a comprehensive, like, the city, Parks and Rec, maybe the university, groups of people getting together and doing kind of a master river plan?
Yeah.
Because I mean, I feel like we haven't ever really fully utilized what it could be.
Yeah, a couple different kind of starts and stops on that, quite honestly. The university has a plan that's probably 60 or 70% complete that Corville and Iowa City have been a part of, talking about that. A lot of the work we did together as all these communities to apply for the state grant, worked on looking at that further. I think it's going to be something that continues, and there's been more and more kind of cooperation between all the government entities to do that. So
Because like you said something about like a tourism grant, I mean, it feels like maybe there's something in there or something like that.
yeah, and that's what brought that together. It's calling it the pedal paddle something.
There's an article in the paper about it
Yeah.
if you want to go.
Yeah, and it's a lot of smaller projects throughout Corville and Iowa City in particular, a few with the county, to try to build that all into one larger system around everything based around the river.
Okay, yeah, 'cause it just, when I moved here like 11 years ago, I was like, I can't believe this isn't utilized better. It just felt like ignored, kind of.
But
I never understood like the IMU, like if you go to the University of Wisconsin, I mean, they're on this beautiful lake, but they use their waterfront as like a huge part of like their IMU, like their student center. I was like, Why isn't our IMU like spilling out into the water? Just
Part of it is the dams, the low head dams that are still out there, so, yeah. What else?
So we're talking about riverfront crossing on the, I guess, west side of the river there. It looked like there were plans to do a bike trail along the river, and then I think it maybe saw it a couple years ago, and then it sort of.
So actually, way back when I was Corville's director, there was full plans to build it on the west side. And they ran into some issues with some landowners. And
Is
so
that
then
the
again,
Coralville's the west side?
yeah, I hope I'm saying that right, but there's still a couple landowner issues, but we're in conversations with those people, so it could happen that we get the trails built on both sides now.
At Gilbert Street, is that where everything in the same spot? So like riverfront crossing the park, the one by Baker Road?
Yeah,
right.
so on the west side of the river
Yeah,
there.
okay.
Yeah, potentially. I don't have any kind of timeline on it, but we haven't given up.
Because it looked like there almost had been some grading that was going on at one point.
So I can't really talk a lot more about it. Yeah.
Well, it feels like those businesses over there, a lot of them seem to be leaving, and I wondered if that was kind of erased.
If there's changes or if they consolidate into some kind of different development,
Okay.
we'll,
So that's kind of in.
that's where we
flux.
come in and talk about what they can do for parkland and that sort of.
And so that is still Iowa City, right?
Yep.
Okay.
All right, any other questions?
Do you have?
Is there a motion to recommend the CIP as presented?
I'll make a motion to accept it as recommended.
Recommended, yeah.
Yep. There's a second.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Thank you so much, Julie. Appreciate all the great work and just,
Okay.
it's great to have that line of sight. So that's one of the things I love of the part of the Parks and Rec that I probably didn't pay as much attention to prior. So it's fun to see some of the great things that are in the works. So really appreciate the hours that have gone into this by you and the rest of the staff. So thank you very much for that.
Now you can be the smart ones in your neighborhoods.
Yeah.
I'm just like, oh my God, I'm gonna report to the neighborhood, they're gonna be super excited about the water park thing, yeah.
That's great. All right, we'll move on to item number 5, report on Department City staff.
Okay, so my main thing on the report is you have in front of you the newest, the latest, the greatest way to count swimming pool use at both Robert A. Lee Indoor Pool and Mercer. So let me just talk to you about what you see in front of you. So to the left side, we have a daily count by hour of the people checking into the pool. And these are the recreation or lap swim or open swim people that are either checking in with their pool pass to swim or paying a daily admission. And that is counted at our front counter, not actual bodies in the water. It's counted there, and we don't know how long they stay in the water, but that's the number of people entering the pool for those reasons. And then you'll see over here you have different columns. So you also have the water fitness count. So the water fitness count, we've asked each instructor to count the actual bodies in their class and report that, and we tally those per day to give you a total number per day. Now, that doesn't tell you how many were in each one of those classes, because sometimes you'd have 3 classes, so you might have 2 in one class, 15 in another. We have that information for helping with management decisions about class futures and stuff, but we're just putting it in a bulk number here. Then you have the number of swim lesson participants each day, not by hour, but per day. The swim lessons are not an actual count of people in the water. They are based on the registrations for that class. So there's, 60 kids registered for the class. Some nights there might be 56, some nights there might be 52, some nights there might be, I guess it wouldn't be more than 60. We're not counting each one, we're just going off of who's registered and paid for those classes. And you have an event count. So things like, some nights we have $2 swim, some nights we had a few Saturdays ago, we had the pumpkin float. Those items will go in that account. So what you'll have at the bottom is you first of all have a total over here of just drop-in swimmers and an average per day of drop-in swimmers. The next column tells you an average total number and then an average of aqua fitness participants. The next one would be the swimming lesson participants, and the next one would be any other events that happen in the pool. And then we give you a grand total on the far right side of the number of people that have used the pool in the last month and how many that averages per day. So that's for Robert A. Lee. The next page does the same thing for Mercer. Mercer's just slightly different in that we currently are not doing swimming lessons at Mercer because they're all here, and we have swim teams based out of Mercer. So instead of a swim lesson count here, you have a swim team count. The swim team count is also based on what the various swim clubs tell us. So we aren't in there counting how many swim team swimmers are in each lap lane.
Who was sick or whatnot.
Yeah, we have that down
Yeah.
over here on
Yeah.
the bottom left. It says what the enrollments are right now. We're just gonna trust those numbers are closed. We also note when the building is closed for swim meets, what kind of swim meet. We are also not going to try to count the bodies in the water during a swim meet. We're just gonna let you know that at this point, that's what's in there, whether it's a large one. And we have some events that happens. The other nice thing that Gabe did for you is you have the total on each one of our drop-in swimmers and then the average swimmers. So you can see that the average per day drop-in swimmer at Mercer is 72.9 swimmers per day. Okay, so when you take the average, if you just take the same hours that Robert A. Lee is open, the average at Mercer would be 29.2 people there when it is right now 17.8 at Robert E. And that's if you compare the same hours to same hours. Does that make sense, what we were trying to do with
So
it?
that's using all the hours that are yellow on this one.
Okay. And those are just the hours in yellow, just days that have a number.
Those are the hours that Robert A. Lee are open.
Yeah.
The
Oh,
pool,
okay.
the pool is open, using those same hours at Mercer, so you can kind of look at how they're both open at the same time, what they're kind of comparing that.
Yeah. And just a reminder, so the numbers at Robert A. Lee, this is the reporting numbers will compare month to month. As we go along, staff will always be looking at these kind of on that semester by semester basis to say, okay, our 8 o'clock, 8 o'clock hours are looking pretty full. Maybe it's time to bring back that 9 to 11 lap swim time. And we would generally make that decision approximately every 3 months. We look at what the use has been and look at changing those.
Because in the winter, does the pool go up because there's not outside stuff, or does it go down because it's just cold and people want to get in the water?
I guess we'll find out for sure.
It could go either way.
Yeah, it's interesting, the 50-meter lap swimmers at City Park don't seem to transition back to our facilities. So I think they're university swimmers, or I'm not really sure, but we do not see a large bump as soon as we close City Park pool. They're coming
That's interesting.
specifically for City Park pool.
Just want to swim outside.
Yeah, and as far as swim lessons are pretty consistently busy year round, but actual other uses, it just depends on the weather and everything else, so.
Speaking of swim lessons, are we reducing or changing individual swim lessons? My son is an individual swim lesson instructor, and he's been told that we are no longer doing individual.
I don't know about not doing them in total, but we are reducing them because we are trying to get as many kids through our program as possible. So we wanted instructors as much as possible teaching 4 or 5 kids at a time
Right.
rather than individuals.
I totally get that. I guess my question is, so my son is certified to do people with disabilities and special needs.
Yeah.
So those
We are keeping it that way.
children and adults need more of a one-on-one situation. So I just was curious.
Yes, we are still offering adaptive swim lessons,
Okay.
so we do have privates in those instances.
Okay.
So those will still be available. It's just the regular private lessons that we're offering where you have 1 or 2 kids to an instructor to
Okay.
be able to stretch our resources
Yeah.
and be able to get more kids in the water. We're taking that step here for the winter spring semester.
Okay, so what you see in front of you was a little bit different than what was set out in your packet. we adjusted it some today after I saw it this morning. So we will send an addendum out that has this as the most current, so everyone else can see that as well. And it should be the same reporting format for now and for a while, so that we can start comparing month to month and everything else.
And are we confident that, as confident as you can be, that the numbers for the drop-ins are being counted equally?
As far as we can tell, yeah, I know that we've gone back and forth with some of the users about this. We've offered to sit down with a group of them again and compare. They're doing counts in the water, which would be a little bit different because we do it by when they check in to the outside. And if they stay 2 hours, they're going to get counted, it twice. And so
because they're counting hourly?
They're counting every 15 minutes.
they're counting a little differently. So we've offered to sit down with them again and show them this report, work through this. I think we will continue to report it this way. If they'd like something different, we could have a second one that is something different. But to use for our uses, I think this is very accurate.
Are they saying that people aren't checking in, so we're missing people? Is that the gist of what I'm getting?
Yeah. And there could be some, but
It's not.
It's not as rampant as they may have led you to believe. And there's confusion about the people that they say aren't checking in. Some of them are aqua fitness and swim people, or coming in for the class. So they actually don't check in because they check in with the instructor on deck.
And they're already accounted for by who's registered for the class.
Exactly.
presumably, right?
So that's why we're trying to give you all the numbers of different ways that we account for people, which we hadn't done so much in the past. So this should give you if we find there's some category we forgot, we'll add it. But right now you're seeing kind of that true count of all the different counts. Yeah.
What's the capacity for the pools as well? Do we know?
That's a great question that
That
I
is a
don't
good
know
question.
tonight. Yeah.
Just be curious, based on numbers, percentages wise, so as far as capacity.
It's still a relatively small percentage of what the
Yeah.
capacity would
Yeah.
be. Yeah.
Yeah,
We
we probably do
definitely
have a
reach that
better
more with
limit.
more with our swim meets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's what we-
Is when we get
Yeah.
a lot of bodies in the water.
Yep.
How would you, if you swung the swim lessons over to Mercer, how would those fit in? 'Cause Mercer seems,
It's too cold, they don't do swim lessons there because the water's colder and
Oh,
people
so-
don't like it. Right, is that true?
That's why we're doing here now. But in the future, that's why we say we would do that only if there was a warm water addition made there. Because you would need warm water additional space
Yeah.
for the swim lesson program to move to it. It would be helpful, we don't have enough diving well space here, deep water space for some of the larger, older classes. Mercer's better for that. But it was probably 3, 4, 5 years ago that we made the change to raise the water temperature here, move swim lessons, stop offering them at Mercer, and let that be more of the swim team lap swim.
Because they keep it colder for them.
Yeah, so. Okay, that's what I have.
Right.
A few weeks ago, just a few brief updates, but a few weeks ago, we had one of my favorite events of the year, which is our Halloween Carnival here. And it's always a fun time to be able to see what unique and creative ways kids come up with to get dressed up. I saw a whole pack of mom that was dressed as a group with a whole bunch of minions. But very successful. We continue to build upon that event every year. We, similar to last year, we have about 1,000 people come through the door here. We utilize pretty much every nook and cranny of this facility, and we actually brought it outdoors this year, which it ended up being a beautiful night for us. It was like 60 degrees outside. We had a DJ that was out there playing some jams. We had a s'more cooking pit. Where people could roast some marshmallows and make their s'mores. We had the bookmobile, the children's museum was out there. We had some other vendors from our farmers market that was out there providing some different treats for the kids too. So it was a great event, always a fun time, always very successful for us. So we'll continue to find ways to continue to build that and make that a highly anticipated event every year. We wrapped up farmers market a couple weeks ago and we took one weekend off. this last weekend, and now we're going right back into it with a holiday market. That's going to be here on Saturday, so that's going to be 8 a.m. to 1. If any of you are interested in getting ahead of your holiday shopping, this is going to be a great place for that. And we've got a lot of vendors that are booked and ready to go. We'll have our other event, or our other holiday market on December 17th, so we have two the holiday season. Staff is working on finalizing plans for the winter-spring season. It's going to be upon us before we know it. We'll probably have those activity guides out to the public towards the end of this month, and then our registration for residents is going to start on December 13th, and then non-resident registration on December 14th. So, and the one last thing I'll say is we're always looking for people to hire for the upcoming activities that we have. So if you know anybody that's interested in a job,
What kind of?
all program areas.
Okay, but it's like a full-time or is it seasonal?
Sorry, seasonal positions or year-round positions, but working for the different programs. That we have.
Okay, so they would transition to programs by season?
Mhm. Yeah.
And
So-
age, is that
yeah.
16 or 18?
Well, we hire lifeguards. If they're
Yeah.
15, we'll hire them on. We'll give them the training. 16 and up usually for most of our other program areas.
And is it youth and adult programming?
Yep. We're always looking to hire. So
Is there-
icgov.org/jobs is where they can find more information about the jobs that are.
Is there a going rate or is it per job? It's rated per job?
It's rated per job, but our minimum wage is $15 an hour. So it starts at 15 and goes on up from there.
Okay. Perfect. I will do something.
Perfect. That's my advice.
So we talked a little bit earlier, we're watering 1,000+ trees right now, so most if not all, they could have all been finished today, I'm not sure on that, but trees from the contracts are planted, plus what we've planted with staff and volunteers this fall, so we've got a lot of good tree canopies started, really all over. So the project from last year, the replacement trees were finished up as well, or if they're not finished, they're within a few trees. So yeah, there'll be some nice good trees out there. And thank you to those that, I know Alice was at the tree planting for at Riverfront Crossings. Those look real nice. We had a good turnout for that. A lot of Rotary members there as well to help with that. Fort Hill, Shattuck Green, Whispering Meadows, Pet Mall, those are all our projects for this year. They're either done or nearing completion. Shattuck Green has the most left to go on it, but it was the one with the restroom facility. So they're working on that restroom right now. I think they have some few more paths left to do within the gardens, but most of the concrete work and stuff like that is done. I believe earlier this week Court Hill was pretty close to being done, so that's looking good. Of course, the Pet Mall's been really popular so far. Anytime I've been down there, tons of kids all over it. So
Is it fully open already?
Yep. So I think all the public input and process that went into that, I think we really ended up with a nice features that are unique to that location and look really nice with the other buildings around it too. And of course, the kids are going to get a stamp of approval when they're out there playing. So
It's I thought I'd see more of them on the kids on the tower because the tower is huge and high. I see them all the time on this new rope structure. That is really popular in that park. So
It's interesting to see what the kids migrate to.
it always is. Every park we put in, I'm usually surprised by something that,
we've been doing some prep work along Willow Creek Trail for that trail project that you saw on the CFP for this next year. So we removed a lot of honeysuckle and other undergrowth, some trees that were in not as good a condition or too close to the trail that the roots were going to be impacted by that. So we've done a lot there. It's really cleared it back from the trail quite a bit. Got some mixed opinions on it, but 90% of what was removed were over honeysuckle. So it's been, we've actually got quite a few thank yous because it's further off the trail for bikers and people walking it. It just feels like you have more room. Leaf mulching in the parks, we had, it should go out soon. The TV Channel 4 crew from the city went and followed a couple of our mowers around in Upper City Park to see how we take care of our leaves without sucking them all up and composting them. So it shows what you can do on a smaller scale as a homeowner to not have to rake as much. So it just it should be out there soon on their sites. So I would imagine go out on social and the city webpage. Other than that, we're going to be transitioning things to snow equipment soon. I said it. We did transition one broom because we've been brooming some of the trails to get leaves and other matter off of those. So we went through all the trails this week, so there's not slippery spots and things like that. So that's kind of the main things. Any questions on?
I have a question. Are we still planning to clear the trails at Terry Troop Lodge for snow? Okay.
Yep, all the same trails as last year, and we gained a few spots the city owns now, so.
Okay, perfect.
Yep.
Great, appreciate it. Nothing from me for kind of the chair's report, and then we can just go around and see if there's any items for future agenda, maybe starting with Melissa.
I just want to thank you for planting all of the trees in the South District, because I was just walking around the neighborhoods looking at all of the labels on the trees, saying hello to each different tree. It's just totally changed the character of the neighborhood, so I'm happy to see that.
Saying hello to each tree. So cute. So nice.
That's great. Thank you.
Very neighborly.
Missy?
I have a lot to say.
Okay.
First of all, I just want to thank city staff. I happened to be at the city council meeting, and the scrutiny under which you guys have operated is something that I don't wish on anyone. So I don't think that's probably what you signed up for either when you began your career. So I wanted to say thank you to you guys for that. For sure, I really appreciate it. I also don't know if this is the place to do to address the letter that was sent to the Parks and Rec Commission that was in our packet, or I think that what I feel like our role as this commission is that we give recommendations to the city council, and so that vote that was passed was a recommendation to city council, and I think that based on Julie's presentation of the complete master plan at the work session, we gave, and some comments from the city manager about what the master plan entails, I think led the city council to vote the way that they did with the packet without any of those amendments that we voted on or changes. So I think that I just wanted to kind of say that because I think that's what happened.
They had all your minutes and the addendums and everything.
But they voted on the master plan as it stood without our recommendations yet. And so I just wanted to address that, like, our role isn't to, I mean, the city council doesn't have to take our recommendation as
You're
as
a recommending body, not a legislative body.
Exactly, and so I just wanted to address that because I think that the letter that was sent implied that we had more
Power.
for lack of a better word.
I would agree with that.
And then the other thing that I wanted to ask is if there was an update, because when we last met, the Historical Society had some questions about the improvements or the recommendations for the city park pool, and so.
So same thing, the Historic Preservation Commission considered City Park Pool in there, and they made a recommendation to the city council prior to the master plan, saying their recommendation was to not, I hope I get it right, to not change anything about the basin of the pool. Replace it or repair it, but don't. But anyway, it's kind of the same thing. That was a recommendation to the council, just as park commissions are recommendations. The council had that full information in their packet and was aware of that. They chose not to change their action on the plan based on it. If that makes sense.
I just wanted to say
Yeah,
that.
good point. Yeah, so much has happened. I've forgotten the steps along the way. So yeah, good points.
Anything else?
No,
Okay.
for now.
And thank you for being at that meeting as well. Appreciate that.
No, I'm good, thanks for everything.
I watched some of the park improvements up close and personal because all those ones on the east side are like the Chaddock and the Court Hill, and it's been a lot of fun to watch happen, and it's great to see that they're kind of almost done, and I see people, kind of, I don't think the one in Court Hill is open yet, but I see people are going to appreciate it, so yeah, thanks for kind of keeping those going.
Yep, awesome. Yeah, that one's close to, real close.
And then also the downtown one too, and Penn Mall looks really nice there too.
I saw they took the old shelter out the north side
Yeah.
of Court Hill this afternoon, so that's gone.
That was my excitement for the day watching that.
Great.
And my last comment is just, I noticed that they're starting the neighborhood, they're building for the Green Hill new development back there.
Yeah.
So that's exciting that that park is going to get an extension, and so I'm excited to see how that comes out.
Awesome. Thank you so very much. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Moved.
Yeah. All in favor, say aye.
And a note about December, sometimes we haven't had December meetings, but if you noticed as I went
Yeah,
through
there's
the
like 6 or
CIP,
7.
You have a review of
we
December?
need one, and
Okay.
so if you can't make it, let us know well ahead of time so we can make it's not the end of the world if it can't happen, but
And y'all should come to this my last meeting.
there you go.
Are there new
And that's the
people?
fourth.
But their applications are still open. I know that we have like a record number of applicants.
Oh.
That's happening across a whole bunch of different commissions.
Yeah.
I think that's great.
Like
Yeah.
at least a dozen or more, which is a lot for any commission here.
That's great.
So,
Yeah.
they will appoint, I believe, at the next council meeting, and we'll get to,
Because it's me and who?
it's you and April. April is eligible for another term, so
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure if she's applying. I think she's applying, and then
Okay.
there's several new applicants, so.
Okay. Well, thank you so
All right,
much.
thank you so very much.